Yo, YouTube, it's Alex again, and I'm doing a video today on why I went my own way as a man. Uh, Otherwise known as, I don't even know if I'm saying this correctly, but Mgtow, Mgtow, men that go their own way. Just wanted to do my experience on that because I have noticed a lot of people, a lot of men have done similar videos on YouTube, and just to give you guys that are sort of, I guess, thinking of the idea of maybe going their own way, of why I went my own way. um, I'll sort of explain right now to you. So I mentioned it in a previous video that I did, the one I did about social media at the beginning. Please do go check that out, by the way, if you haven't. Um, in 2015, I had a very, very poor end to a relationship that I was in. To give you a bit of a background on this, this girl that I was dating, I had by far the strongest connection with I've ever had with anyone in my life. I genuinely loved her after wasn't long. I swear it was like a month or two. I'm pretty sure I fell way deeper than she did, but then she ended up falling just as deep as me because we were literally exactly the same. We were, at that time, exactly the same people, and I was almost shocked that there was someone that similar to me who I was attracted to, and I was so deep in it. And long story short, we went into a relationship, and I can't really explain what the downfall was, but to give you perspective, she was going through a lot of issues in her life in terms of depression, anxiety, and whatnot. I had been through that in my life not too long earlier, but because she was very negative sometimes, it brought me down, and then I was negative, and then I brought her down, and we just kept bringing down each other. The arguments were shocking. They were some of the screaming matches, it was toxic. We were in a very, very toxic relationship, and no one really has fault to it. I think, you could probably argue that I pushed for the relationship too much, and maybe she wasn't ready, and maybe she thought that, she was clearly interested in me, that she thought she would lose me if she didn't commit to a relationship like I was wanting to do. So she jumped into it. Was it too soon? I knew her for about 3 to 4 months before. I don't believe it was too soon, but what I didn't really think about at the time was if we have both sort of been through that depression sort of thing, that we could bring each other down. And as I said to you, the arguments were getting toxic. We would have the strongest up and downs possible. The ups were something I can't describe to you. The love that we shared was the deepest feeling I've ever felt in my life to this day. No question about it. But the lows and the arguments were unbelievable. It was bad. I remember I was about to play a game of futsal, which is indoor football, soccer, in case you guys didn't know what it was. And my girlfriend at the time, the girl I'm talking about, messaged me blowing up about something to do with a girl that I used to talk to on Snapchat. And she knew about this girl because when we just got together, that girl was still sending me Snapchats to me and whatnot. And the other girl was into me as well, and we did stuff. But at the time, I was emotionally immature, and she asked me if anything had happened with that girl. And I just said no because I couldn't be bothered for the drama, because what happened with that girl was so long before that, and I was so deep in love with my girlfriend at the time that I literally was not looking at other girls. I was not keeping my options open. I wasn't doing any of that kind of stuff, so I was just like, what's the point of telling you, because you're just going to blow up and it's going to start this whole argument. Anyway, she found out. I think maybe I left the Facebook open on her computer, and girls doing what girls do, started going through all my messages. And I'll never forget it. She texted me all this stuff before the game, being like, guess what I'm pissed off about, all that kind of crap. I had no idea. And she told me just before the game, and I quickly had to ring her. This is like 10 minutes before kickoff. And at the time, I was taking futsal extremely seriously. And for me to even have any focus on remotely anything different for that day, let alone 5 to 10 minutes before kickoff. I ran into the bathroom to call her just before kickoff, was so out of character for me. And it just showed that I was in control. My control was controlled by somebody else. You know, her emotions controlled me to a certain extent, you know? And yeah, she just, long story short, she was screaming at me, and I was like, I'll never forget the way she screamed on the phone that day. Like, it was, I can't explain it. It was like, the tone of it, it was scary. Like, I was like, I don't know. I can't explain it to you, but I remember that night we also, my brother and I were having a house party at mine because my parents were away. And yeah, I got back and I went to my mates because me and my girlfriend were arguing after the game. I was driving back home and I rang her, talked to her properly, and we were still arguing. And I actually broke up with her on the phone. I was like, you know what, this is pathetic. We're done. And I remember I went to my mates and like, I went to my mates and I started like, I got very emotional. I think I started crying. And I remember a few of my mates drove me down the road because I just needed to get away from the house at the time. And, you know, had a long chat with me and were basically like, this isn't you. You're changing. You're so blinded by being in love that you don't know what's going on, and you know you're unaware to anything that's going on, and look how it's making you feel. And yeah, I drove back to the party after that chat, and who turned up 2 hours later to the party? She did. Did I end up getting back together with her? Yes, because I was weak and I was too reliant on this girl, and I allowed this girl to control my emotions. So even though that day I said to her, we've broken up, and I said to my mates that we've broken up, and they were telling me all this, and these mates, I value their opinion more than anyone else in my life, alongside my family, I was still blinded. I was still not wanting to hear it because I was just trapped in this relationship. I was trapped, and I just wasn't in control of my own reality. And this was because of this girl. And I remember that night, it might have been that night or it might have been a separate night. I think it was the same night. We got into bed, and she said something along the lines of when she went out, she drank a hell of a lot. She did a hell of a lot of drugs, more drugs than I used to do. At a younger age as well. So I think her brain may have been affected by all that. She also had ADHD as well. So, you know, I know that Ritalin in the long term can also do things to the brain that, you know, if you weren't taking Ritalin, you'd probably feel better about certain things in life. And, you know, I think it does alter your brain. That's what I'm trying to say. But she did a lot of that. And I remember we were in bed and she said to me, if you do not sleep with me right now, I am going to break up with you. And me being in the weak emotional frame that I was in at the time, and particularly that I was in that night because of all the stuff that happened, I kicked off and I completely lost my temper. And I will never forget that she was getting she was almost happy that I was reacting like that because she knew she was in control. I'll never forget it. I was standing outside my room. I was screaming at her. My room's there. She was just outside my parents' room. Was just there. So my room's there. She was just there. And I was screaming at her, like clearly in a state that I've never been in. By the way, my mates still tell me this story, that they've never seen me to this day like that ever in my life. And she was laughing. She was laughing. Right? Like quite literally laughing to egg me on. And that night, funnily, this was like one of the most eventful nights of my life. That night, I had taken something, it's a few things, and I can't believe I'm saying this to you, but when you take a certain something, sometimes your body temperature goes all haywire, and then how I thought at the time to get over that was to jump in a hot bath. So I was in the bath, right, with my girlfriend's, one of her best friends. Like, we weren't doing anything, but I was in the bath, like, I still had clothes on, like, I wasn't fully naked or anything. She was sitting next to me, and will never forget the words that she said to me. She said, this is her best friend, by the way, she said, Alex, this girl is psychotic. You need to get out of this relationship. In one night, I broke up with her. Her best friend, after I took her back, said, you need to get out of the relationship. And all my friends was telling me how I was virtually unrecognizable from the person that I was before I jumped into this relationship. And I still didn't break up with her. I still did nothing. And I kept the relationship going for maybe a couple more months. And then ultimately we did break up. And I'll get to that in a moment. What I'm trying to say to you is this damaged me. Like, this completely made me realize that if you are in the wrong relationship, it can ruin your life. Because I will tell you, if I was not alert enough to this and I didn't have friends and family tell me that relationship wasn't good for me, I would have stayed in it and I would have gone back into a depressive state, and I probably would have been in a completely different situation in my life now as to if I didn't break up with her. And as I said to you, a couple months after this night, I don't know, we were arguing a lot, like over Christmas. I went away with her. We were still arguing all the time, and we were just having arguments. And one morning at hers, I woke up and I realized that she had gone through every single Facebook message on my Facebook Messenger. Like, I mean, she read everything because I think it was on her history. And when she woke up, I was like, mate, like, that's not cool. Like, that's not cool. Like, we're together now. I don't want to bash her, but this is just some of the things that happened. And it's not entirely her fault. The whole negative aura that was behind our relationship was creating this, creating us to be worse versions of ourselves. So it wasn't just her, it was the whole environment that we created for each other, if you know what I'm saying there. So yeah, we had all those things were happening, and then I remember, I'll never forget this, I had work at 7 a.m. the next morning. We started kicking off about something randomly on the phone, and I'll never forget it. For some reason, I was in my brother's room that night because he was away or something, and she said something, and in my brain, some loud voice was telling me, break up with her right now, do it. Don't do anything else. Break up with her before it's too late. And I literally was like, all right, we're done. It was like, that was the moment. It was the flick of the switch. We're done. I said to her, we've broken up. We've finished. This is it. This is the last time. If you want to come do it, if you want me to come do it in person, I'll do it in person. But this is done, and I'm not going back to it. She then said something along the lines of, I can't remember what it was, but she was insinuating the fact that night she would take her own life. I think she said, if something happens to me, it's not your fault. And that completely, me also being in an emotional state that I was in, and me not really understanding female nature at the time, that made me panic more than anything. I was like, if this girl hypothetically does take her own life, I am never going to forget about this, and I am going to be damaged for the rest of my life, even though I made the action of getting out of this relationship. So she drove over, after not really following through with that threat. She drove over, I officially broke up with her, and she tried, when I was in the car with her, she ran outside the car. She was just down the road from my house, and she started trying, first of all in the car, I forgot this, tried to scratch her wrists, to cut her wrist. I had to stop her physically from doing it. Then she ran outside after I stopped that to try and cut herself on a sharp fence, and I had to stop her from doing that and calm her down. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, this relationship completely screwed with me mentally. Like, I was literally, my friends were telling me like I was lost, and like I was taken, by Satan, and they were making all these jokes like that. I'm not saying she was Satan, but just the fact that my soul had been completely taken and I was no longer in control of my own reality. And that's why I decided to go my own way, because I'll tell you something, after that changed me. I was a person that needed that sort of human interaction all the time. I needed that validation from people. I just needed to be around people all the time. I didn't really like being alone. After that, I wanted to spend more time alone. Maybe it was, first of all, out of depression, after sort of going through all that. But what being alone all the time made me realize, and not having women in your life, is there's no problem with having a connection with women. There's no problem with being in relationships with women. And, you know, a lot of people call that as beta and everything if you're in a relationship. I do disagree with that, because I do believe if you find the right person, you have that connection, and you, in your heart of hearts, believe that that's the person for you, and you feel happier with her, and she is adding to your life and you are adding to her life, fantastic. But if it's anything else where you're arguing, she's playing manipulative games, she has ulterior motives, ulterior intentions, don't do it. Because seriously, don't do it. I learned so much about myself being alone. Like, I remember I was talking to a girl I used to work with recently, and she said, I can't be alone. And I was saying to her, you'll never become the person you want to become if you can't be comfortable by yourself, because essentially if you're comfortable being alone, you're comfortable being in your own skin, which in turn increases your confidence, which in turn makes you a better person. Okay? So just understand that I'm not necessarily saying men go your own way. I'm not necessarily saying that, but what I am saying is go your own way if you meet a woman that isn't going to add any value to your life. And let me tell you, I'm not going to go start here bashing women. I was raised by a single mum, right? So I have more respect in women than a lot of the people. But what I will say is that the wrong women for you, a lot of the women in this day and age have ulterior motives. You know, women can't love you for you. They only love you for what you provide for them. And that has been increased more so on social media, because social media highlights the materialistic possessions and the materialistic lives, aspects of life, not necessarily the core values of people and the things that are actually important in life. So it's further made women like that. And that's why I truly believe that if you do meet women like that, go your own way. Because let me tell you, it can ruin your life. It very well was close to ruining my life, okay? And that's why I'm sharing this story for you, because I want you to understand two things. I want you to understand, number one, the wrong girl can ruin your life. It can take you out of your comfort zone. It can ruin your potential. It can make you unrecognizable to the people that actually care about you the most. It can bring you down. And if you're in a toxic relationship where both people are not mentally stable and not loving themselves, so therefore they can't love the other person, let me tell you, it will be even a million times worse, and it completely can change your whole life. It changed my life, but lucky I was able to sort of channel it in a different way and sort of use it to make me realize that those sort of relationships you need to stay clear from. I want you to realize that, and I also want you to realize that I'm not necessarily saying go your own way. I am saying that make sure it is the right female for you, okay? Make sure you have a connection, make sure you bring each other up, not bring each other down. And also, just to also add on to that, make sure you can be alone, because let me tell you, before you want to get in a relationship, you have to be fully comfortable in yourself, and you have to fully have your life set up. So please don't go around chasing women in relationships, because it doesn't do anything for you, and it is false validation. It's not the validation and the long-term things you need in your life to succeed. So that is all I've got your time for you today, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Probably went a little bit longer than anticipated. If you want to leave suggestions of what other videos you would like to do, please contact me, and I'm more than happy to also answer any questions you may have about things you're going through in your life, because I honestly would love to help, and I do believe that this is a calling of mine now, helping other people. So thanks very much, guys. I hope to hear from you soon.